like, or like I'll have it's full, let's say, data.
Yeah.
It cuts out halfway through. I don't know. So in the middle, I'll probably get up and go check out what we're talking.
Sure,
so while you're talking about something, I'll be like, I'll be back in a second.
Yeah,
and then, because I'm not too worried about how loose this goes.
We did that with the Peak newspaper, and they recorded like a 45-minute, like it was maybe a 35-minute phone call conversation. And the guy called back like 2 minutes later, Brandon Barrett, and he's like, "Fuck, it didn't hit record." He's like, "I didn't get any of that."
Start again, right?
It's like, you're getting a 5-minute interview now.
I did that with Greg Hill, an athlete, and I went to his place, and I was in Revelstoke, and I hit record while I was setting up, and I hit stop when I was trying to record, so I just had it all backwards. We talked for an hour and a half, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't get it," and I drove away from that Revelstoke furious. Okay, so Kevin Winter, thanks for coming on my show.
Hey, great to be here, man. Thanks for coming down to Coast Mountain.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me in your tap house here. It's episode 26 is going to be for me, so.
Very cool. Congratulations.
And I haven't been to a brewery at 9 o'clock in the morning in a long time. I think ever.
It's pretty normal for me. So I'll ease you into it.
Yeah. What's the shift? What do you guys do? What time do you guys start in the morning?
We run 7 days a week down here at Coast. The brew team currently right now runs 6 days a week, and the guys will start showing up about 8 o'clock in the morning, fire up the kettles, get everything hot in there, and everybody goes home by about 5 or 6 or 7, depending on the day.
Right.
Long brew days for sure, but a great team.
Cool.
And so, we keep it not quite round the clock, but we're pretty busy 7 days a week.
I mean, you have to, right? Everybody wants your beer. Everybody wants. So we're at Coast Mountain Brewery, Coast Mountain Brewing.
Yeah, Coast Mountain Brewing.
Yeah, Coast Mountain Brewing in Function Junction in Whistler, and it's probably the best beer in town. Well, it is the best beer in town, I'd say.
We're a little biased, but there was this little beer festival about a week ago or so that they said we were the best out of 60 breweries, where, of course, it was by tokens. So our booth obtained more tokens than any other brewery, therefore crowned the champion, if you will.
A biased audience, maybe?
Maybe a little. Our home turf here in Whistler, that's for sure. We have a great support system from the community here in Whistler, and we're pretty stoked. Yeah.
But I think the beer community is pretty supportive of each other, right? I mean, there's probably some competition going on as far as secret blends or whatever it is. But I would guess these beer fests, everyone's getting along, right?
Everybody, for the most part, it's a rad
couple of
industry.
Beers and everyone's happy, right?
Well, and even before that, the brewery owners, the brewers themselves, we trade industry secrets all the time. Right down when I started brewing commercially, maybe 10 years ago, we maybe didn't talk about yeast strains, or we got 4 main ingredients in beer. We got yeast, water, hops, and barley. And you could commonly talk about maybe two of those kind of thing. I maybe wouldn't tell you my water chemistry or something like that, but. We now everything's wide open, and it's a beautiful industry for that. The better beer that we have overall here in BC creates that craft beer tourism aspect, and us specifically in the Sea to Sky corridor. We're very open with what we do here, and we trade information back and forth with everybody up and down the corridor. Yeah,
because it seems like even just having guest taps and stuff from other breweries in your tap house here. I mean, it's just about spreading the good word of beer, and if you make good beer, you don't really worry about other people.
Yeah, don't forget that we're all customers too, and we all want to make sure that we produce beers that are rad, that we enjoy drinking ourselves. And so when you come into Coast Mountain's tasting room, I want to make sure that the customer has that experience. They walk in and they're like, "Oh, rad! There's a great beer from backcountry down in Squamish," or maybe something a little rare, a little harder to find in the Sea to Sky corridor that we can bring in, and thereby gets you a little more excited when you see the tap list.
That's a question I have. How do you choose variety? Because you want to have somebody walk in and go, "Hey, there's a beer for me here. Cool, I'll drink it." Yeah. How do you? I mean, there's obviously trends in brewing and everything else, but I'm curious, what your philosophy is. I make up words. Philosophy is towards variety. Because I mean, you do have some staples. Yeah. I'm sure whatever one just keeps selling, you you got to keep making that one. Yeah. But those unique ones you make, how do you just go, let's try this?
Well, for us specifically, differentiating ourselves in the marketplace is maybe it is at the core of our business plan. It's who Coast Mountain wants to be. We want to make sure that we keep pushing the limits. A modern progressive brewery that maybe takes a few more risks than a traditional style of brewery where you'd have more core brands that you brew repeatedly all the time, and you're really nailing down those recipes, and in turn those become your flagship beers, and the most sought after, maybe not the most talked about. With social media now being so large and huge, you rarely see the conversations of what might be your Pilsner beer here that we're looking at a 4-pack in front of us here on the table. We're talking more about that seasonal rotator that you just dropped last week as a collaboration with whatever brewery down the road.
Right.
And But for us, differentiating ourselves in the marketplace, finding a style that is still drinkable, the alcohol maybe isn't way up there, but it's got some color, it's got some depth and complexity and flavor. That's kind of what everybody's striving for, or it's what we're striving for. That's for sure.
Right.
And I shouldn't say that that everybody's going after that, because really breweries are built on styles now. They can be hazy beers, they can be sour beers,
Right.
old world Belgian beers, new world hop aggressive beers. Certain breweries pick a style and they go with it, and they get garner a following through that a stylistic or style of beers, if you will.
Yeah.
So we kind of like to blend and do maybe one or two hazy beers, one or two old school IPAs, one or two sour beers, a rad pilsner that I'm a little biased on. I think it's pretty rad.
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah. So you were talking about. I'm going to backtrack here in a minute because we're on this train here. But you were talking about sour beers earlier, and you said that you kind of the way you brought them out and kind of the introductory, and people were like, "I never heard of a sour beer. What's that?" Was that a rocky start for those things? Like, was it something you had to like say, "No, just keep trying. It's really good"? And have you refined? Like, I know your juice box has been up there for a while, and I'm just curious if you've refined those ones, or you've had to just kind of keep bringing out new ones to try to keep people interested.
A little bit of column A, column B for sure.
Right.
I mean, when we started, Coast Mountain just had our 3rd year anniversary, September 1st.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah.
And when we opened up the doors, we brought a couple of sours on, and just not that long ago, those were not the most popular beers that Coast Mountain, with us specifically, were producing. The pale ales and the IPAs are still, the larger consumed by volume beer.
Sure.
And but very quickly sours have taken over or taken off, better said, and they're extremely popular. And where we maybe thought we would bring them in as a rotator to begin with, now we're seeing them at all times on our lineup.
People demand those.
There's that much demand for them. So you mentioned the Juice Box Sour Wit. That was a fun one for us and a popular one. So we decided this summer to keep it all summer long and bringing some other ones as rotators, fruit infused sours throughout the summer. And now there's some more, percolating away back there that will get a little deeper, darker, sweeter as we move into the colder months. The alcohol levels will come up.
That thing about different colder months, we talk about like people think comfort food and you eat lighter in the summer, those kind of things. Like there is, so as a brewer, that is a trend of going to the darker, heavier beers in the winter, and that's kind of like people operate. I'm a fan of lighter beers. I mean, I obviously like a lot of beer, but I never really put that in there where it's like you have these seasonal changes to heavier beers.
Yeah, and that's our palates. That's each individual, of course, but you'll see that richer foods, heavier foods, bigger plates, portions, that sort of stuff happens in the winter, and the beer follows suit with that as well. We like a little bit more residual sugar on the tongue.
Yeah.
A little bit higher alcohol. You got to stay a little warmer out there.
Yeah, it is funny because you think in the wintertime you're not doing that much, and people are more like people hanging around more. And you drink those heavier beers, it kind of puts you in the couch even more than.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that was an interesting point because I know that you do have these popular sour beers, and you brought this new Crystal Chair beer out, which is a little bit lighter beer. Yeah. Just around as we're going into the winter season.
Yeah, well, no, Crystal Chair we launched a few months back. We hit that right sort of the end of spring, and it's a style. Well, I mean, if we want to enter into this conversation, or at least I'm going to start bringing it up here, the revolution of beer styles, or sort of the chronological how it all happened here, is that lager beers were incredibly popular, and then we brought on the IPAs, the pale ales, where they're a little bit more aggressively hopped, and the brewer got extremely aggressive for a while there, where bitterness was the popularity, and we wanted to, on a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being the most bitter beer you can have in the International Bittering Units, IBUs.
That's what that is.
IBUs. That's what that is.
I just thought I'm like, I know what you're talking about.
So you got ABV, of course, on the can, and it'll show 5% or whatever it is, and then you'll see this little IBU, International Bittering Units, where the higher the number, the more bitter the beer is. And brewers were trying to really, hit it over the top with 100, 110, 120 IBU beer or whatever. And that thankfully has calmed down a little bit.
Okay.
We're starting to see IPAs kind of flatten off with excitement, and the sours are now taking over.
Right.
There's been a wave of sours over the last 2 to 3 years. Outside of BC, of course, we're kind of following suit behind a few of the states below us there in Washington and Oregon, California, and beyond. Of course, sours have been relevant for a couple of hundred years over in Europe, Belgium and all the rest where they originated from. Mm-hmm. And, so these modern styles are becoming very popular. And behind that, now we have a wave of lager beer coming back.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about just your dad's,
dog beer.
Just kind of, I'm not going to name names of any certain
man.
macro breweries out there.
I'll name them if you want.
You can name them. And, those, lack their flavor of beers are not what we're brewing now. We're seeing lagers. It's a different yeast strain. You got ales and you got lagers, and you have a spiderweb, a family tree, if you will, of beers that will go underneath those hierarchies of ales and lagers. And we don't see nearly a third of the different styles of lagers that are out there in the world, predominantly over in Europe.
Right.
And so we only kind of, and especially our generation, we've only ever really seen light beer, lager beer, and now like low calorie lager and this sort of stuff, right? Well, now we want to infuse different hops, and we want to infuse different, maybe barrel aging techniques. We're, using different types of malts that maybe harness more complexity throughout the lager. But the lager kind of overall trait is generally, you can sort of suggest it's going to finish a little bit drier, a little bit crisper than what an ale with a heavier residual complex that might have that beer. So,
but I think it sounds like you're trying to there's never been like a craft approach to the lighter beers.
And it's coming now. That's where I guess I was getting at. Yeah, that's coming right now. We're going to see.
Which is great because it opens up the market a bit, but it also gives you more options to brew. And it gives the person who's trying, like maybe those heavy beers, can get into the craft brewing scene more because they're like, oh, I don't have to drink, what's typically or traditionally been the heavier, because I find like I like drinking beer, but I find like sometimes those heavier ones, they just, even alcohol content aside, if it's a bit more dense, you feel like you have more alcohol in your system. It's just kind of more like, oh god, you walk out here with a couple of beers, for sure. Yeah,
you feel it. No, I'm right on board with you as a customer. I mean, even when I go to the liquor store, a year and a half ago to 2 years ago and beyond, you would have seen these 650 mils or 22 ounce bombers that are in the liquor stores, and you buy a bottle.
Yeah.
And you might pick up a more drinkable beer, like in a pale ale fashion of a 12 pack or something like that, and one of these, one of these big beers that we'll go over to our buddy's house and
have you tried this new chocolate ale thing? You split it, right? And then everyone just goes back to their light beer.
And everybody goes back to the light beer because nobody really wants to indulge in a chocolate crazy cayenne pepper imperial stout all night long. So we'll carry along our little pale ales with us too. So we're learning, I think, as a progressive industry, how to pack a ton of flavor into lower alcohol beers, right, and keep the customer interested through a 4-pack or a 6-pack or beyond.
I think that's a great approach, and I'm curious. So, like, speaking of how you're taking that approach to these lighter beers and stuff, but obviously it comes from a history of knowledge of what you know about beer, and being able to kind of pivot and make these different beers and know what flavors go with what and how to actually impact the flavors of a lighter beer. Then maybe you wouldn't use that same approach on a dark beer or like a heavier beer. Mm-hmm. But you've had a pretty good history in brewing. I mean, you've been brewing for, I don't know how many years you've been brewing now?
About 10 years commercially now.
Yeah, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started brewing in Whistler?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you really want to go way back.
You can go back as far as you want to go.
My wife, Angie, and I, at that time, owned a home in Pemberton, and we were just home brewing on the stove, and that's how it all started.
Oh, yeah?
For like many commercial brewers out there, that's the same story.
Right.
You started at home tinkering around with whatever
like
equipment you could.
Too.
Exactly, like growing wheat. I probably had a plant there at that time too, and within that. That swamp juice got a little bit better and better each time that we brewed, and all of a sudden the door started knocking a little bit more, and the phone calls and the buddies coming over on Friday nights and stuff, that got a little more popular, and
that's cool.
And that worked its way into my first commercial gig with Whistler Brewing Company down around the corner here, which I'm very fortunate to have worked with that team for 3 years or so there.
Okay. I think I remember you. I didn't know you then, but I think I knew Angie back in the day.
Yeah.
I think I knew you. I recognized you were there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was rad, man. I was sweeping the floors over there and polishing polishing the tanks, cleaning
Yeah.
tanks, and then started transferring beers and packaging beers, and worked my way up onto the kettle. You know, we kind of commonly call that as a brewer's title. You know, if you're working on the kettle, you're a brewer.
Yeah.
And that happened pretty quick. And then I went off to school in Chicago and got accredited as a brewer, as a trade.
Chicago?
You betcha.
Oh no shit! Is
Yeah.
is that the place to go, or is it just where you went?
It has one of the oldest schools. It's called the Siebel Institute of Technology, and that is it's kind of like BCIT here in BC. It's a trade school.
Okay.
And I got my brewer's ticket, if you will,
Yeah.
down there.
Okay.
And there's you know, so I really enjoyed my time down there, and came back. And continuing like online courses and all this sort of stuff, listening to the webinars and
You gotta
just
keep learning, right?
geeking out as much as I could for a long time. And took a job down in the city and worked for an outfit out there that had 15 different liquor stores and a bunch of pubs domestically.
Wow.
We opened up 5 pubs in South Korea and started shipping.
Wait, so you worked for not a brewer? You worked for
No, they were a brewery too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
the Mission
right.
Springs Brewing Company
Okay.
in Mission.
Okay.
And I drove down that low heat highway, and I was like, "Is this thing ever going to end? Like, I don't know where I'm
jeez.
going." And Ange and I were kind of laughing at each other, going like, "Where are we? And where are we going?"
Is this next to the universe?
I just thought I was a flat Earth. I was a flat Earther,
Yeah,
and I was going to
yeah.
fall off the end.
Yeah, the proof was right in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
not all that far from here, but
Yeah.
so I apologize to anybody listening or seeing that.
It's a good zone.
Yeah, it's a great spot.
Lovely
Great
place.
spot. Love it.
Yeah.
And great people. Mission Springs was the reason why we went out there, was for the people, for sure.
Cool.
We fell in love with the family atmosphere out there, and that's where we had our son Oscar. He was born out there, and really just cut our teeth in the brewing industry out there, as the gentleman that ran that place at the time suggested, do whatever you want, Kev, and gave us a big credit card, and I went out
Dude.
there and spent a lot of his money.
Oh, yeah, right.
And learned how to do it wrong
Yep.
before learning how to do it right.
Okay.
And we're very fortunate for the time we had out there, another 3-4 years or so out there, and helped facilitate the opening of Hearthstone Brewing in North Vancouver,
Right.
and hired those guys on, helped develop initial recipes, and work with graphic designers to get that place up and running. But the hats off to those guys; they took off and running. That's Darren Hollett, that has now just recently opened up House of Funk Brewing in North Vancouver.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And
breweries everywhere, right?
and we've all worked together at some point. Another really popular one, name dropping, Parker Reed out there at Fieldhouse in Abbotsford. They've taken the social media and modern kind of craft brewery, mixing with old world from Belgium and Europe. Probably one of the better guys that are doing that.
Cool.
From a customer standpoint, looking in, the beers look fabulous, the labels look fabulous, the beers taste fabulous as well, and exciting to have worked with those guys. I got guys that I worked with now, Old Jail and Chilliwack. Everybody kind of goes in different directions as
Sure.
they grow within their own careers, and
Yeah.
Ange and I always had our sights on coming back to Whistler.
Yeah, cool.
And I actually, when we closed our door to our homebrew shop in our proverbial homebrew brewery in Pemberton, there, our house, I looked at Ange and I remember saying to her, like, 5 years and we'll be back.
Yeah.
And we're going to open up here in Whistler, in Pemberton.
Yeah.
And when we came home and back to that house after our time down in Fraser Valley, the business plan was up and running, and we're ready to move forward with this plan of being in Pemberton.
Yeah.
And I recall a quick conversation with Ange, and it was quick. It was a couple of minutes where it was like, well, hold on, let's run these numbers against doing this in Whistler.
Yeah.
And we ran those numbers, and both of us, our jaws hit the floor, and we were like, okay, forget Pemberton. We're doing this in Whistler.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
Ange and I had met in Whistler. We'd spent Ange. I think she's almost 20. She is 20 years now here in Whistler. If you forget about the couple of years or a few years that we left there.
Yeah, sure.
And so this is our home, and we love Pemberton for what it is. But Whistler's where we like to. And I grew up in North Vancouver, coming up and down the highway. Family shared a cabin in Alpine Meadows. So Whistler for us is truly home.
Yeah.
Pemberton was an availability to buy a home where
Sure.
otherwise in Whistler we can't get into the market. And still can't today. It's
It's tough, man. Where do you guys live in Pemberton now? You live in Whistler now?
No, we're West. Yeah, we're
Okay.
in just up in Brio there, just
cool.
outside the village, and
Nice.
trying to make a go of it in a crazy expensive ski town with a pretty rad little brewery.
I mean, the cool thing is about ski towns, a lot of people drink beer. So,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
everyone's looking for something new. And Whistler's one of those things where when you're new, they'll give you a chance.
Yeah.
But that eventually, if you're not good, that chance goes away.
The honeymoon.
Yeah, and I feel like you guys are past that now, and everyone's you got the chance and you've taken the chance. It's working.
God, I hope so.
I'm not trying to jinx it. Sorry, but
yeah, let's not come with
yeah. But no, I think that's like knowing the area and just have you didn't just come in and try to open up shop. You knew the area. You spent time here making beers, and then you cut your teeth. Essentially globally on other companies. So
location for any industry
Yeah.
or most industries, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That product based where you got to sell something.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be somewhere where there's a customer base for you. And Ange and I, prior to this crazy brewing industry, we were in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, right.
And so that's, I guess, where a lot of the relationships were hatched.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you an insight into what a consumer, even though it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the consumer is looking for certain things, and it kind of gives you an insight into what they might be looking for and how to run a business. Because damn, if you're going to run a restaurant or whatever, they're probably one of the hardest things to run as far as margins and price and cost and everything. And as a brewer, you've got to watch every cup or every bag of yeast or every bag of barley you use is like going to cost. It's going to be
amount of money.
Incremental if you don't use it right.
Yeah, and then the waste from that and everything. And
you can't just go and make crazy beers because no one's like, you got to have an idea of what the market will bear. And that's how you get that's where your education in other breweries comes from.
Certainly. You got to balance your portfolio of beers that you have. You got to have drinkable beers, core beers, flagship beers, some call them. And then your rotators, you can get a little crazier on those because you build up the passion for the craft beer enthusiast, that guy that might be a bit of a tourist coming through who's looking for the different breweries as on their holidays, or they're coming for a ski town holiday, and they've tried your pale ale a number of times, and now they're willing to step out the boundaries a little bit and try that sour beer or something a little bit different. And for us, of course, that keeps the passion alive in the brewery. Our team, I would have stayed working for somebody else if I just wanted to brew X amount pale ale every year.
Yeah.
But the whole idea behind Coast Mountain is to keep it small, keep it local, almost hyper local, if you will.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
And then brew a wide array of beers. I hate to say it, but it's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's for us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We want to do something different. And
I think that's what, like, if you're passionate behind it and making stuff you like, I think a lot of people don't realize that when they do something, there is people that have the same interests that you would have. And people get in their head like, no one's going to like this. Mm-hmm. You're like, but we all, people buy the same cars, people buy the same things, people love hot dogs, hamburgers, they like pasta. Whoever made pasta for the first time probably will people are going to love this. So making a beer, you're like, if I like it, we'll put it out there. And maybe 80% of the time it works. 20% of the time we get a failure, but
Yeah, and we see that, of course, with our brands too. You bring something on and you say, oh man, I thought that was going to be a lot more popular than it was. And again, we're incredibly fortunate for the community that we have. International destination, our clientele just keeps coming. It changes over every 6 months, every 3 months, or whatever the schedule might be. And we have a really good following of people. Just they want the beer, they want it badly.
It's funny. So we're in Function Junction here, and this is not a big part of town. And your tap house is it's not the largest place, but
500 square feet. 500 square feet.
Yeah, which is great because then it's just I feel like it's when it's busy here a lot.
Yeah.
I come here a lot, and it's busy here a lot, and I feel like you have staples, the people that are down here, and then you have you see the rotating people come through, but. It's just that atmosphere because when it's busier, you feel a lot more like connected to people, even if you don't know them, but you're sitting 2 feet away. Yeah. It kind of feels like a very European idea of just like being super close to people, and you're drinking good beer.
Yeah, the idea was a tap house that a tasting room, if you will, that you're going to experience some flavor. There's going to be color in your beers. There's going to be a flight of 4 beers that'll hit your table, and there's going to be a flavor wave that runs from left to right or right to left or whichever way you're going through your flight.
Sure, yeah.
And you're going to really have that experience. And then all the while, you're rubbing shoulders with a family of 4 that's just got off the plane from New York or Europe or wherever they may have come from for their holidays, and you can share their experiences and you can have a few laughs with them. You'll meet other friends that come down all the time, just like a coffee shop or another local hangout. We obviously have our locals that come down and support us all the time, and we're very grateful for that. But just the same amount are folks that are just coming through the corridor here and visiting us from wherever they're from, and hopefully taking home a case of beer and a T-shirt or something,
So going back to school, do they teach you, I'm curious what the focus is about how to make beer, just like here's the fundamentals, this is the ingredients you need, and then you learn to tweak on your own? Do they teach you how to run a business? Do they teach you all that kind of stuff? Do they teach you mass brewing, or do they teach you craft at school? Can you go into different aspects?
Yeah, totally. Good question for sure.
So I'm curious, Because you could probably try, like you said earlier, I could try to apply to be a brewer at Molson's or whatever, because I want to be making these great things. But yeah, anyway, I'm just curious what the school.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple different programs that you can get into within the brewing industry. Predominantly, of course, it all starts with the 4 main ingredients, which is fairly simple. 4 main ingredients, you think, right? Within that, there's a myriad of flavors and different types of barleys that we can use, and hops, of course, and yeast strains and water chemistry. So those 4 main ingredients can really be augmented to create a wonderful array of beers.
Right.
So schooling, predominantly in the brewing part of it, and the program that I took,
keep going.
focused on the brewing aspect, focused on the ingredients and how to put those in the kettle, at what temperatures, and for how long we're resting, and the A to B to Z of producing the craft beer, producing the beer itself, packaging, cleanliness, and sanitization and packaging. Or
costing, all that kind of stuff. They do like costing.
Costing and everything else, but I mean, it wasn't a business school.
Okay, that's I guess what I was asking. Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't learn marketing. I didn't learn, how to run a business or HR or any of that stuff. And some of those are aspects that we got to clean up, and we'll learn as we go, of course, because we, in many ways, the craft beer industry is on fire right now here in British Columbia and throughout much of the world. People are asking for flavor, and in doing so, we recognized that years and years ago that there was an opening here in Whistler, that there was not a lot of attention to the town itself. And sorry, I go off on tangents a little bit.
Man,
I found a little page, and I turned the page there.
Yeah, good, man. I'm down for sure.
So I'm back in Whistler, and I'm saying to my wife, like, we have got to get in maybe a little sooner than we want. Yeah. We were down in the Fraser Valley running those breweries there, and looking back home, going, we want to get back home for one thing. We wanted to be home. But two, we felt that we should get back home before somebody else came and opened up another brewery here. Yeah. And now fast forward 3 years, we're looking at it and saying, hey, why doesn't somebody else add a brewery here? Because I think there's room for it, and we would support that fully. Yeah. And there's room in the corridor, and there's room on taps around town.
But there's there's the gin guy down there now.
Yeah, Montes Distilling.
Montes,
He's doing vodka, gin, that sort of stuff first, and then his game plan is to get into the whiskeys and everything, as of course they take a little longer to age.
Yeah, well, you were saying earlier about making product, and you didn't learn about the marketing and everything else, but I'm a marketing guy. I feel like marketing's just kind of like, you don't need to go to school for it.
Yeah.
You don't need to learn it.
We're doing all right.
It's kind of common sense marketing. It's like, if people don't piss people off, get them interested, find a way to entertain them. And I feel like I always talk about marketing a lot, but don't go to school for marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, if that puts on your resume and it just kind of gets you a job, but if
all
you're
those
doing
marketing
what you're
guys
doing,
listening out there are just cringing
Shut
right
up,
now.
Proctor.
Like, what? They're changing the channel.
I went to school for this long, and I'm like,
do you know how much I'm in debt right now for school?
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely gives you some. I mean, the business school, though, I think that's something that I wish I had gone to just to learn about running a business a bit more. But
what I do, to just interject on that, what I do is I hire for that, quite honestly. Yeah. And what I do is I want to surround myself with folks that are more educated in certain aspects than I am, and I think that betters our business overall. And I think if anybody were to take that, and when you're looking at opening your own business, is surround yourself with folks that give you passion and give you excitement to continue on in the industry that you want to be in. And for us in the brewing industry, I can't count. I'm not a finance guy. I'm not an accountant. So my wife actually went to school, and she went to university for a couple of years while we were down at Fraser Valley, and got a basic understanding of accounting and back office. And so she now can run that aspect. We hired a controller, someone with a CGA or CPA, I guess they call them now. Okay. Not exactly sure what her designation is. Chartered accountant.
Accountant. Sorry.
Yeah. And so we got the right people in line there. And then for me in the brewing aspect, to take it back to brewing again, because it's kind of what I do. I know how to brew beer, and I'd like to say that I'm half decent at it.
I think you're all right.
But I wanted our brewery to be better, and I wanted to learn as well. And I'm not done learning. I got a lot to go here. And so we went out and we sought a brewer in James Walsh, who's a fabulous brewer. Horrible individual. If you're listening,
I don't even know him, but sounds
he's a super. Yeah, and so he's got a wealth of information, and he's a younger guy, and he's got a lot of chalkboard experience. So things like water chemistry and breaking out the calculators and everything else. Maybe I'm a little bit more. I learned kind of more of an engineering aspect by twisting wrenches and banging nails and trying to figure out the aspect of flow from you produce the beer in the kettles, and the way it goes off to the fermenter, and the way it goes off to packaging, and I'm looking at it from 10,000 feet, trying to work it all out, whereas he's in on the intricacies. He's figuring out the little microisms. Microisms? Is that
microisms?
of the beer.
That just took a weird turn.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
rewind,
think,
edit.
but I mean, having the overall picture, like the bird's eye view, as you start. When you start, you're focused and you're staring at these small elements, right?
Yeah.
As a business gets bigger, as you grow, you become the bird's eye view guy. Has to take. So you can't. Dude, you can't do it all. No one can. I mean, if you think you can do it all, you don't want to do it all. Yeah.
No, I want to.
Oh, you want to? Yeah.
I want to.
Dude,
If I could, I'd be here 24/7, and we'd move the family right into the brewery. They're pretty much
weren't
already.
you guys living in here for a while?
Yeah, yeah, we were.
Awesome, dude. That's the fucking passion behind stuff. I think is pretty
we
crazy.
We moved into a small 700 square foot bachelor pad with no walls in Function, and we lived there for the first 2 years of the business with a family of 4 on top of each other. And I mean, hey, it's right around the world. There's people that are in whatever states and everything.
Sure.
So I'm not trying to say anything. All
Nope.
I'm saying is that our passion, is I think as high as it can be. We really wanted Coast Mountain to succeed. We still do on a daily basis, and we work really hard to do that. And as a family, you want to spend some time with your family outside, and maybe talk about the mountain trails and the skiing that's of course so exciting here in Whistler. And we try and balance everything as much as we can.
Yeah, it's cool because I remember I used to see you here all the time,
Yeah.
and now I don't see you here as much. So that's good.
The 10,000 foot level is
I think
starting.
I think that's good.
We're at that. Doesn't everybody, or I still at least live by this a little bit? Everybody says 3 years, and if you made it 3 years, then you'll probably make it. We've spent 3 blood, sweat, and tears, lots of all of the above here, and we're starting to see a little bit of a light where Ange and I can take a day, or to be dead honest, we just took our first holiday, 12 days, and we left the province. And I didn't get on a white sand beach. We went to Toronto. It wasn't all that exciting.
Still though, I mean, out of town doing something different. What were you getting like? Do the guys who just run it? Are you getting like texts like, "Hey"?
I worked every day when I was sitting
Sure.
Toronto and Muskoka. We went out there, and I was connected the entire time. We bought extra data, and I was sitting there, always connected to the business. As it's a way of life for us, and it's an industry that we didn't just take this job just to make ends meet. We wanted to create something that would be here for generations, for my kids, and create something for the community that we felt was missing in the beer industry here, which is an attention to detail and craft beer and flavor and everything from the beer through to the packaging. It has to be there, and it's got to be rad. And for that, I can't take a day off. I don't want to take a day off.
I don't think you should. And I think you should, but I think you should be focused, because I think in this small town, the person who started the business, the owns a business, you'd have to have a connection to the community. So if you just start a business and then walk away from it and try to let Whistler run it, or just let people come here, the community is going to be like, this isn't personal. We don't get what's going on here. Like, sure, Starbucks can be here or whatever. Yeah. Everyone knows it. But if you're the owner of a small business in a town like this, people want to know that you're around.
They love to meet you. They love to high five you. They love to have the chat.
It's a success story, and everyone who comes here everyone that comes to Whistler, for the most part, has like an idea of what life can be better, and we can do these grand things, right? And it inspires you. And so to have, if you're an owner that just opens up, starts to walk away, well, your business is going to start to fade away.
I totally agree.
So I think that's like where you need to be part of, like, in your, maybe 5 days a week or 4 days a week. And if you go on vacation, maybe answer a text once in a while. But
don't work like 3-4 hours of the day while your kids are out swimming in the lake, and I'm like up there answering emails.
Yeah. But the thing is like, the only time you step away is if you're like, hey, I'm selling it, whatever else, I'm out, And that's not, that doesn't seem like that's going to happen here. So
well, my little mantra is, as long as the beer's good, everything else will fall into place. And that was from day one. We've said that. I remember saying that to my wife about 6 months before we opened. I started, there's a lot of stuff we kind of do is like shooting from the hip, and you just feel it, and you can feel it in your gut, and you know that is going to work. And whether it's the design of the tasting room, to the tables and chairs that we put in here, to the type of beer that we have on tap now today, or maybe an establishment that, for us, capacity is a huge daily issue with us. We're a small brewery. We like to coin the term boutique craft brewing. And in that, I don't think we've really mentioned yet that we don't distribute outside of Whistler. We're a tiny little brewery here. And so our attention to quality is our brand. We want to make sure that we're a premium brand. We have a fabulous tasting beer. And the capacity of that's hard. So we have a lot of people that are asking for the beer, and we can't get to them all the time. And I've gone off on a tangent, and I can't remember where we started that conversation from.
Oh no, we're talking about like quality and like being part of the business and being here to support it. And like this town wants to see the people who run these businesses, right?
And we're there 24/7, and yeah, you can't ever. We don't take a day off. It's incredibly demanding, but I think you get into we got into this industry for the love of the industry itself, the camaraderie between the breweries. I got a lot of great buddies that are running other breweries, successful breweries, and we share stories all the time. And I know that those guys are prevalent on the day-to-day operations of the business, whether they're actually running the social media, whether they're digging the mash out of the mash tun and a part of the daily brewing cycle, or they're on the packaging, or they're on the sales, and they're answering emails left, right, and center. I kind of do all of that, and I don't see an end to that for many years. So hopefully my back stays up nice and strong.
Yeah, man, just do some yoga or something.
That's right. How are you talking?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the different process and stuff, and I'm just curious. What's the typical cycle? We're kind of moving away from like the passion. What's the typical cycle of brewing a beer from start to finish? Like, is it 6 weeks, 2 months, 2 weeks? I guess it depends on the.
Very quickly, I took my sommelier and I started looking into the wine industry years ago, before the home brewing of beer. And man, does that take forever! And I just couldn't hang around that long waiting.
Is that why you guys have wine on tap
3,
here?
4. Sorry. I love my wine, and my family would much have rather that we opened up a winery and bought some acreage up in the Okanagan.
More prestige. Everyone thinks it's all fancy, you know.
Fuck that.
Rolls Royces and like white cars and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm impatient, I guess, and 2-3 years to wait for a bottle of wine or something like that. Or we're brewing. We're in about 4 weeks for our ales and 6 weeks for our lagers. Okay. That's a general rule of thumb. Some can take much longer. Some can, the modern sort of hazy style beers that we got nowadays, they can come out in about 21 days.
Is that a flavor thing that you decide on your style of flavor, that you decide how long it is? Or is there like a mathematical minimum that they like, the yeast have to be this long? Like, is there?
It's you and I standing at the tank, tasting off the tank. Literally, it's a hard job, and then that becomes more of a norm. With the yeast that you're working with will metabolize sugar at a certain rate, and that is determined by the volume of beer, by the temperature, by the biomass that you introduce into the tank, and then. That aspect of what we call primary fermentation, metabolizing the yeast, turning that into CO2 and alcohol, usually is somewhere between 7 to 10 days. And at a specified, roughly, like if it's an ale, let's talk pale ales here for a second, roughly about 18 degrees Celsius. And 7 to 10 days, that sugar will be fully metabolized. You'll have dried your beer out. There's enough residual sugar there for the palate on the finished product. All these fermentation tanks that are behind us, and we got this big window we're looking at all of our tanks over there, are surrounded in glycol, so they have a jacket. They're double walled, and much like antifreeze in your vehicle, we can turn that. We can turn those that temperature down. And immediately the yeast is a single-celled organism. It's alive. It gets cold, and it by nature it binds together with other buddies, little yeast cells, and that gravity takes over, and the yeast will fall to the bottom of the tank. And these fermentation tanks that we see behind us have conicals, a cone at the bottom of the tank, and it can be, the larger the tank, the larger the cone. And we'll after another week or so, depending on the recipe and depending on the beer, we might take the beer off the yeast immediately. And in most recipes, that's the best way to do it. Or the beer might mature for another 2 to 3 weeks in that vessel. We can take the yeast out of there. Or there's multiple different ways of doing it, but let's sort of trying to keep it basic. 7 to 10 days of primary fermentation, secondary fermentation, and/or conditioning, better said. Maturing the beer is usually about another 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll either, if it's already in the packaging tank at that time, maturing, or B, moves up to the packaging tank, we'll then, away we go inside of about 4 weeks for most pale ales. Right. Your lagers take a little bit longer, simply due to the yeast, as it works at a lower temperature. Okay. And just like you and I out in the wintertime, we kind of, do everything a little bit slower because it's a little colder out there. So
summertime was not for me, whatever,
Yeah, summertime we're running around having fun at the lakes and doing everything. And now you got to start to bundle up. And so the fermentation aspects take place at about 12 degrees, 11 degrees, depending on, again, the beer style. And then that can just it just takes that much longer for those yeasts to consume the sugar, and then for them to settle out as well out of solution. It just takes that much longer.
Is there any difference between like elevation and all that kind of stuff? Like, I mean, obviously your water, there's obviously a difference when wherever the water comes from, that kind of stuff, I would guess. But I mean, yeah, elevation, like temperature,
boiling points, and
like all that kind of stuff, right? Like it probably changes a bit.
The guys in Colorado, they really got to worry about that sort of stuff.
Oh, really?
You know, they're way up there. Whereas here in Whistler, we're 2,000 plus meters above sea level and everything, and our boiling point doesn't change all that much. Water chemistry is massive. If we think about water in a beer, if you got a 5% beer, well, 95% of that's water, right? So the 95% of it better taste good, and so any impurities that you have in the water are going to be shown in a especially something like a Pilsner, a Crystal Chair Pilsner in front of us on the table, so softly. That beer is incredibly clean. And it's due largely in part to the water that we have here and the massive filter that we.
I was going to ask, so filtration, that kind of stuff. Like,
we have a huge carbon filter. It's full
I don't take any secrets away, so you can just.
No. Again, it's all wide out there nowadays. I'm not hiding anything. Wear your heart on your sleeve, and you're really going to enjoy life a little bit better. Tell it honestly. Yeah. The huge filter that we have in there, it costs way too much money, and it's full of like carbon and seashells, and so the water filters through there and takes out all the little 99.9% of the impurities. And
I need to borrow, man, because my shower, I live down here, my hair goes green. I need to borrow.
I thought that was a hair dye you had there.
Yeah, no, I don't dye. It's a natural blonde, man. But I need to borrow that shit because my hair goes green. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the filtering water, because they talk about, like, I mean, some brands talk about glacier water and stuff. And
it's all marketing.
Yeah, it is, right?
How about cold filtering? There's a product on there. It's got like a silver bullet or something like that with a whole bunch of token hot girls in skimpy outfits that are trying to sell some product that's cold filtered. And if we were to filter, which we don't, because I don't want to scrub any of the oils, the beautiful flavors that we can produce in the beers, it has to be done cold because you can't filter warm. So, and these are all just marketing tools.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm a marketing guy. I get you. People don't say what the actual true process is. You just say what it is. It sounds like it's new.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, you cold filtered?
Holy shit, really?
Dude, that beer's so much crisper than the next
When your can goes different colors, it shows me how cold your beer is.
Exactly. Yeah. Throw some more hot girls in the picture, and maybe your can will sell.
It is. I guess the process. Everyone claims their process. Everyone claims what their key to their process is.
Yeah.
But if you're just making your product, you mentioned earlier, whereas like you're trying to just make good product. You didn't go to school for marketing, that kind of stuff. And I think if we're just talking about product speaking for itself, that's what's first and foremost. So the processes and everything else you do, if you're diligent in your processes. I have a question actually. If there's a bit of variance in your process, you're making a certain style of beer.
Yeah.
How much will the flavor change if, say, the temperature is 2 or 3 degrees out or 10 degrees out, or like, will it just be like, fuck, we gotta dump it? Like, how does?
Yeah, bit of both.
Yeah.
It can get funky. I mean, if you start to increase temperatures, things can more esters are produced. The beer becomes more floral, and then it could go bad. It could go really bad should that temperature spike drastically, or conversely, if it's you don't get the temperature. I mean, fermentation is an exothermic reaction, so it gets warm as the sugar's being metabolized. Yeah, I mean, for sure.
But how much of a variation can set it off?
1 degree.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Oh. But you and I out here on the tasting room floor won't. But us when we're back
expert
in
palate
there
would be like
under a microscope, and for the seasoned veteran, the taster, the cicerone is the comparative aspect of a brewery guy that's a sommelier in the wine industry. He's a cicerone in the brewing world. Those guys can really pick out those tiny little aspects. And what we'll do here, and what breweries have been doing for ever, is trying to recreate a certain beer time and time again. Is of course, with your flagship beers, your core beers, you want to be able to brew that same beer again because you've just spent X amount of dollars on a hard-earned 4-pack of cans here, and you don't want to take it home and be like, oh, this isn't what I had last time. But truth be said, in a small brewery, we're always trying to better what we did. So every single time we go to the kettle, which we do 6 days a week, we go to the kettle here, i.e. brewing beer, we're trying to make that beer better. So we'll change small things each time. And what we'll do is we'll take you on the ride with us. We know the end game is maybe we're actually going to change an entire hop out, so a flavor component. But to get there, I'll have to start blending with this new hop.
Ease us into it?
Yeah, and ease you into it. And I'll do 2, 3, 4 batches. And it might take me 6, 7 months to get to where I want to be.
Yeah.
But I've taken you along with me on that ride.
Flip the cart and try something.
Let's actually let the cat out of the bag here. A little while ago, we did a yeast comparison on our Daydreamer, which is our Daydreamer IPA. It's one of our flagship brands. It's in this like hot pink can, and it's pretty fun. Marketing rule right there. I designed that can. Isn't that crazy?
Like, oh, really?
I didn't even
you guys work with Cormac Power, right?
Cormac Power.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that guy's cool. Yeah.
At Cormac Power. You gotta look at his Instagram. The guy's crazy, man.
Yeah, he's good, man.
He's a crazy guy. Great guy. Crazy.
Crazy great.
Thank you. And, so we brought it on tap, and we told the customers here that we were using a London Ale yeast strain, and we were using a Windsor Ale yeast strain.
Sorry.
And the two were side to side for a good 4 weeks here, and we kind of let the public just have at it. And everybody came back to it and was just like, oh my God, I love the London Ale. Oh my God, I love the Windsor. Oh my God, I love this. Yeah. And all the while, of course, we're taking that data and we're brewing behind the scenes here and blending yeast strains and blending batches and trying to come up with the best Daydreamer we can possibly do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, of course, there were some people that dug their feet in, and they were like, "No, I'm a Windsor yeast guy." And we have a lot of locals here, and
sure.
being a tiny little brewery that really we only distribute here in Whistler. Yeah. There's some big fans of that beer. Well, we ended up and we took it into London, and we're now all London yeast strain, and have now started to spread that yeast throughout some of our other brands as well, without even telling you guys. And it's
shady, man.
And the flavor has just continually gotten better.
Cool. Yeah,
and
great.
we just kind of wanted to bring you on that ride, but we also wanted to show you what we were doing, because that's kind of the truthful, honest guys that we are.
Well, and I guess too, in a small operation, you can, right? Like you're just, I think, do you have
ebb and flow a little bit better, or a little bit more, and maybe the next guy.
Yeah. Do you have people come in and go, like, the people who come in as they think they're experts, and you're like, dude, or whoever.
Oh yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, you just gotta.
You just got to shake that guy's hand, look him square in the eye, and be like, no, I totally get it, man. Yeah, no, that pale ale, it's a bitter pale ale. That's how we intended it to be. And thankfully, we're hard on our sleeve, and we'll be like, no, that's the way that we wanted it. Yeah. And that guy will be like, whoa. Like we have a beer on tap right now. It's a fruit snack, blackberry lime Berliner Weiss. Like you go to the old world and you see that fruit infusion, and we would be like, thrown out of the country. Like they wouldn't even allow you here. Right. So you get like purists that will come in and be like, that's not a Berliner Weiss.
Right.
That's not a Goza. And you don't even say Goza, it's Glows. There's
right.
certain ways, and of course we just love to back.
That is, okay. Right.
Yeah. So we have a beer called Let's Just See How It Goes.
Yeah.
And,
I got that, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to have another beer coming out pretty quick, and here's the, big debut. We're going to have another beer saying It Goes Well, and those beers are coming. And, we're always just, I don't know, bastardizing style guidelines and for us, that's a big part of the fun.
It's good, man. I mean, that's where the industry needs, like, there's these little igniters or firecrackers that change things, right? And I mean, if you're gonna stay this, if you're gonna follow tradition, but if you're not, move forward and try something different. And that's why I was asking earlier what your influences are to try do different flavors and different beers. But I mean, it seems like you're growing here.
Yeah, totally. In capacity, we're growing. In styles, we're growing. We're getting riskier. We're getting more adventurous, right? Adventurous with our beer styles that we choose to brew and to showcase. Mm-hmm. And then I mean, it's going to be a wild ride. I hope it continues. I mean, we I don't know. I want to brew interesting beers that keep me coming back. And again, I mean, I know that's kind of egotistic or, bad to say I'm brewing beer for you, but I figure if our team loves it and continues on, with that passion, it'll keep the people coming back. As long as the beer's good, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's obviously, yeah. I mean, and then so you guys are growing a bit. What's the future of this place? What's going, like, I see you guys I don't know how you can talk about this now, but I see you guys you're moving down down a bit here?
Yeah, totally. No, we're really excited.
bigger?
The brewery is started about 2,500 square feet. We just got another 700 or so we're just over 3,000 currently.
Yeah.
And we were working with some developers across the tracks over there, still in Function, for about a year and a half.
That all went sideways, right?
That went sideways.
Not you guys, but that development.
Yeah, those guys just, to be dead honest, if you're listening out there, they can't get their ducks in a row.
Right.
And we had to jump ship.
It's something to do with the driveway or something they built? Anyway, we can move on.
Well, they just can't figure out
working.
the roadways, whatever. And so we jumped off that, and so we made our bed here at home, and we're excited we have made the decision to stay, and we have taken on another 1,500 square feet of another unit that's just in the same building, and we're just sort of figuring out exactly what we'll be doing in that unit. There's some exciting stuff that I can't get into right now, but I'm super stoked that Coast Mountain's growing.
Yep.
And then with the Whistler Beer Fest, we won the second time in 3 years, and with this one, it gave us some more draft contracts that have us a little bit nervous, going, oh my gosh, can we fulfill those contracts? And those mean, for basic sense, that's just kegs of beer that are going to be sold at certain pubs around town. We need to make sure that we have enough beer for those guys,
right.
and there's potential for even bigger contracts, and there's folks out there that really want the beer. Whistler's a very thirsty town, and who knew?
Everyone's
right?
trying to get rid of their problems. But so I get the question. So you're talking about like growing and stuff, and I was like, when you start this business, you have these fears of like, maybe a failure or of just whatever could happen or like the unknown. Then you get to a point where now you're this fear of like, I have a lot to, something to lose now, right? You've got this level of like, this level of business, this level of, the reputation strong.
Yeah.
And you start to get these like people coming at you for these bigger contracts. Like, man, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And now you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, how do you handle
Inventory.
how
How do I handle inventory?
mentally? How do you handle like is your approach? Like, we did this for a reason. Or you like, there must be times you're like, like, is this going to work? Like, how do you stay focused and not think like, get overwhelmed?
There's a lot of excitement around Coast Mountain and other breweries in the province to go big. Our beer does well. One of my best buddies in the industry is they're Steel and Oak Brewing down in New West. Their beer's fabulous, and they continue to grow. Four Winds Brewing, another really good friends of ours, and they're just fabulous beers, and they're just going off. And you've got to kind of target, just like any other industry, where do you want to be in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years down the road, and how many, for us, a volume as we produce beer, what kind of volumes are you going to be looking at? So we have forecasts that are built, and then we kind of blow through those each year and redo the forecast and redo the budget and say, okay, up that by 20%, up that by whatever. And a lot of it is just again back to the gut feeling, like can we do this
Right. Okay.
and not harm the flagship brands that we've built and the trust of the community within those brands? Can we go out, and for us, it comes down to brewing the beer and how much of that can we produce. And so the brew house that we have produces 2,000 liters of beer a day.
Wow.
And
A ton of beer.
So, but you could brew on that brew house 5 times a day. And that's kind of the way that we set that up. Now, we'll never see ourselves brewing 5 times a day, but we already are brewing twice a day on certain days.
Okay.
And you might want to introduce another shift where you're brewing, a guy comes in at nighttime. I can do 2 brews in about 10 hours or so.
Okay.
And so I might bring in a nighttime guy, and we'll do another brew from 6 o'clock at night till 10 at night or whatever.
Right.
The math is totally out the window.
Whatever.
I didn't ever say I was
not
a mathematician.
Yeah.
So, and it really comes down to just adding another tank.
Okay.
So the more tanks you got, the more beer you got, and the more experimentation you can have at that level.
What's a tank worth?
A tank's worth a lot of money. Each of the tank.
It's not common. It's like it's not private.
Depends on the size
$100,000?
of the tank, but
Okay.
you used to sort of say $1,000 for every hectoliter, and these tanks are 20 hectoliter tanks.
Okay, so significant.
Each tank's around 20 grand or so. Brewing industry, the capital costs to get going are not cheap. It's a very difficult business to get off the ground financially, and you really have to have a good business plan and a great location and a great product.
Yeah, because you wouldn't know how to brew at scale until you can afford the kettle.
And you see that time and time again in this industry.
So to do what you did, like someone took a chance on the road and started brewing at scale the first time.
Yeah.
But then to do what you did, to go away and learn how to brew at scale somewhere else is like
Spend somebody else's money first.
Yeah, and as long as if you do it well, you get the reputation, you can do it yourself. But I never thought about that brewing at scale, because it's like a lot of things. I guess you have a small business. It's like, how do I take this to the next level? I have to now increase production to 1,000%.
Yeah.
How do I do that? I have to test and just hope this fucking works for the most part, right?
Yeah, it's a gut shot. You gotta be able to do it. And even when you're bringing a brewer from a larger scale, like there's some brewers that have come from Molson down to a smaller brewery here recently in our industry, and they took a little bit of time to get their feet wet before the beers actually started to get clean. Conversely, the other way around is hiring a home brewer to start a production facility this big. They're like, they're spinning their head going, how do I wrap my head around producing that much beer that often, and to be able to do it time and time again. So actually you touched on the ingredients and everything, and I'm going to kind of turn a page here a little bit, where I like to kind of the wine industry, every year you have a certain crop where it was fairly sunny this year, and we had a great yield of grapes, and there's that much more juice produced in the grapes themselves, and so I'm going to charge $20 a bottle for this Merlot, right?
Right.
Next year it was a shitty year, dude. It rained all year round, and the grapes just didn't plump up. Yeah. I'm going to charge $18 for that bottle. Okay. And you and I, the consumer, are well aware of that, because last year it was $20, and this year's, and it's all out there, the harvest and the conversations and everything. We have water, barley, hops, yeast. Those are all natural occurring,
But you can't,
But I can't change anything, and I have to always produce that Daydreamer or that Crystal Cherry Pilsner with the exact same flavor profile. And we have seasonalities, like where the water runoff for us here changes, and there's more hardness, there's more minerals content in the water at certain stages of the years, and we adjust our process all the time. The barley itself might not have been a great season, and I didn't get nearly as much plumpiness out of my barley, thus as much starch, thus as much fuel for the alcohol in the beer, and as such I may have to use more of it or change the provider. I might have to go over across the pond and bring in a different ingredient provider to attain the same flavor profile. Now I'm using grain that was produced, however many thousand kilometers
20%
away.
more cost, whatever it is, right?
20% more cost. Now, for us, we actually only use European grains here. We use what I like to say is the best ingredients in the world. And I remember the conversation with my wife, very frankly. I said, if I use the best ingredients in the world, it's like a chef goes down to the dock and he gets the freshest fish off the boat. I mean, that guy at the sushi joint is the best sushi joint in town because he's the best chef, and he got the best cut of fish or the best cut of meat and the freshest. Well, in the brewing industry, if we use premium barleys and we use hops that are grown right around the world, and I'm able to source those from Australia or New Zealand, we're going to have a flavor profile in our beer that is excelling against the next guy. Mm-hmm. And so it may cost us double what the other guy's brewing, but the flavor profile is going to be there and the quality is always going to be there. And so for us, it's a very difficult dance to produce the same flavor and make sure that your $15 for your 4-pack or whatever it is isn't spent, and it's not a different flavor every single time you come or every single time you buy that beer. So I don't know where I went with that tangent. But,
we were just talking about ingredients. You were talking about I was just saying you were talking about I forget what we were talking about. I was trying to make up like I knew, but I forget.
Turn the page. Next.
Yeah. No, I think, dude, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm just I don't know shit about making beer. Yeah. I just know what it's like to drink.
Now you know a little bit, right?
Yeah, dude, you have so much knowledge. It's crazy. I could probably sit and talk to you forever. But so we talked about the future of this place. What's your? I don't know. You talked about a few beers coming out. Do you have any give any secrets up on what's another? What's your?
There's no pumpkin beer coming from this brewery.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
There's
That's
a good
great.
secret.
Okay, great.
Ever.
That's
Sorry
cool.
for you pumpkin purists out there, but I fucking hate pumpkin beer.
It's gross.
It's never going to happen.
I don't even know all these chestnut things. I don't know. I guess I'm not a dark beer guy, the heavy beer, so I'm not.
We're really excited with the increased square footage. We're going to work with a lot more barrels. Mm-hmm. So a lot of barrel aging, a lot more sours, a lot more funky, weirder, wilder beers. Cool. All the while still focused on our big flagship beers, our Daydreamers and the Crystal Chairs and Forecast. And my favorite beer that we've ever done, drum roll, is the Surveyor IPA.
That's good.
I love that beer, and it's got a beautiful balance between bitterness and West Coast hop characteristics. The alcohol's up there at 7%, so I don't get to have a lot of them. I got 2 kids at home, and I got to run this business and then run that business when I get home.
Yeah, right.
And you know, as for the future of Coast and the beers that we got coming, I mean, it's going to be interesting. We have a lot of collaborations that we do with local establishments, restaurants. This year we're going to be doing a lot more with retail, just to bring in the community here from Whistler and allow them to see the behind the scenes and actually get their hands dirty and brew the beer themselves, and then be able to put their logo on there. Yeah,
Sick.
for sure. So we'll do a Proctor,
yeah, really? Yeah, casual beer would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, actually, from here, I'm going to a meeting with a hospitality group in town where we're going to be talking about a collaboration that will can this coming season.
Great.
And you know, it's just don't take your foot off the gas. Go. Keep it flavorful, and as long as the beer's good, everything else will fall into place.
It's cool, man. Well, I'm stoked. I think it's cool. I'm glad you're across street from my house.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Sorry about your liver.
Yeah, well, you know, I can feel it every day. It's fine. But no, I think it's great. I think it's cool to watch you guys grow and get bigger, and just see the success of this company. So,
well, thanks very much for taking the time to come down and talk to us, and pretty stoked just to be a part of the community. Pretty stoked that people like yourself actually want to sit and chat with a boring old beer geek like me.
Dude, shut up, man. No, fuck. You know, it's cool, man. I mean, every time I come in here, you know, always friendly guy, you're shaking hands. When you are here, you're talking to people, and I think that goes a long way with. And
people. I swear I'm here a lot, just because you don't see me. I mean, there's many hours in the day.
Maybe I just don't come here as much as I used to. I don't know. I'm trying to lay off the beers a bit, but
I'm not as much here when it's after dark. That's for sure. I got kids I got to put to bed and everything. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, I guess you work during the day, so do I. I come here after work.
Yeah, look at me. I'm here at 9 a.m. I'm here.
Dude, I know, right? Yeah, I was like, we're gonna drink beer now. I'm like, nah, we can't do that. Well, yeah, Kevin, thanks, man. I appreciate it. So Coast Mountain, what's the Instagram? Coast Mountain
Beer.
Coast Mountain Beer, and then Facebook's just Coast Mountain Beer too, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Just type Coast Mountain in there, and hopefully it starts to show up. Yeah. I mean, it's on there, and I try and put pictures up there of interesting things to look at, and social media is a hell of a drug, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Just make good beer, man. People will come for sure.
That's cool. It, man. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for coming. Or thanks for having me for sure. And I'll probably be here this afternoon sometime.
Yeah. Hey, cool. So will I for a little while before the sun goes down.
All right.